Still to come on Sunday afternoon, Barry Humphries takes tea with Margaret Olley in Obsessions, and the extraordinary Art Deco murals of Napier Waller and the new life they're being given. Now to our continuing series of conversations with visual artists. This week, Lynette Walworth talks about the fascinating nexus where art meets science.
Lynette Walworth's interests cover a wide range of subjects, from marine biology to physics and architecture, all of which informs an art practice committed to asking the big questions about the world in which we live. With visually stunning imagery, her installations transform the gallery environment into an interactive space of immersion and wonder. Welcome to Sunday Afternoon, Lynette Walworth.
Thanks, Andrew.
Your work has been described as new media work, but in a way it's not in the slightest bit geekish. How do you describe your use of technology in your work?
Well, I think I'm probably not as interested in technology as the space that it can help create. So really, if the technology is hidden, for me, that's the best thing. And in a way, I use certain tools because they help to create an environment that's the one I want to make.
How do you explain your role, what you're looking for, what you want to do when you first start talking to scientists?
I think it's a really useful thing to be an artist. It's like an incredible passport to talk to a lot of people. And I guess, first of all, I would do research and make sure that I have a genuine interest and an understanding that is worth talking to someone about. I went up to Magnetic Island some years ago with some cinematographers and scientists who were filming some of the mass coral spawning on the Great Barrier Reef. Incredible natural phenomena, which was observed by a group of scientists from Townsville, James Cook University. And I'm interested in looking at how the imagery of that particular phenomena might align with some other phenomena that I'm interested in placing side by side.
Part of the whole setup really is about participation, isn't it? And the involvement of the viewer.
Yeah. Well, Hold really required that participants needed to interact with the work for it to exist. So I tried to imagine something that was a little bit similar to the sort of attention that, in fact, scientists are giving to something that they're observing. And so then I tried to imagine what might be a space that could create that sense of immersion into viewing. And that point of merging is what I hoped that the work would come into.
And certainly that simple role of having a bowl that the image is projected onto, that you, in a sense, create it, you change it, means you have an investment in that image, don't you?
Yeah. And yet that was one of the most beautiful things about watching people with the work. And this thing of the simple gesture of holding a bowl and handing it to someone else is a very understood gesture.
It's kind of a universal language, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very easily understood and is very banal, but it also can be quite ceremonial. I'm interested in the idea that scientists are involved in a kind of continual opening up of knowledge, so that even though there's an interest in coming to a point of understanding and maybe defining something, there's also at the same time an equal imagining that this thing that's considered to be knowledge is only true until it's disproven.
Yes, because of course they will have differences of opinion. Science, especially when it comes to environmental or climate or whatever, there's very big difference of opinion in a way.
That's why I really don't say collaborate with scientists. I talk to them, and I talk a lot, and I have incredible and often intense conversation, but I'm really aware that I'm dealing with someone whose sense of time is very different from my own. But I place this thing that you're looking at beside this thing that this person who's working in a different field to you is looking at. Now, because of the way science operates, those people may never speak to one another, but my freedom is that I can bring those things together.
Would you say that that what you're trying to do is take these very complex ideas in science that have lots of ramifications and networks, and then present them in a way that somebody can actually get a palpable sense of it as a physical reality?
I suppose it's a couple of things. One thing is, I think scientists have held on to something that a lot of us in some ways have given up, and that is this beautiful state of a continually unfolding, complex space that we are inhabiting. I guess I'm interested in creating spaces.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it can be about just the space that I'm making that is reminiscent of, more reminiscent of what I think is scientific exploration rather than the result of that exploration. It's like a state
I see,
rather
right.
than the result of it.
Participation is a very important part of your work, as with Hold, but there's a new piece that you're working on at the moment, Still Waiting. Could you talk us through that a little bit?
When you enter the space of this work, there's going to be a very projection of a large tree, or several trees, but there's a lot of corellas in this tree. So when you enter this space, all of the birds will fly from the tree. So
Oh, I see.
you have ruptured the space by entering it. Your presence has changed the environment.
Mm-hmm.
The work of being in that space then becomes how to learn that environment in order that the birds might return to that tree.
I see.
And you're learning that environment with a group of people that you don't know. But what I hope and what I imagine is that the person who's been in the space longest holds more information and might actually begin to negotiate with other people in the space so that you actually get to see the fullness of that environment again.
Now, this piece is being exhibited in Australia.
It's at the Ivan Doherty Gallery in August, and it's also going to be in Helsinki at the same time. So it will be in IZEA as part of the International Symposium of Electronic Arts. So it's sort of interesting, showing in a science museum in Helsinki, showing in a gallery in Sydney, same piece. And I think really it will be interesting for me to see how audiences in those two very different places respond to this work, which in some ways is going to look very Australian.
Are you interested in your work going the opposite direction, perhaps, going from the gallery environment to being quoted in a science journal?
I think I have been quoted in a science journal, actually.
Yeah?
My work was shown.
In glowing terms, I hope.
To be truthful, I haven't read, but I did. My work was shown last year at Sydney University in a symposium of a whole lot of scientists who were working, examining luminescence, fluorescence and bioluminescence. And so I guess my experience with scientists is that they're quite phenomenally open.
It's a positive conversation, as you say.
I'm not presuming to make outrageous claims from a stance of a small amount of knowledge, but that the work I am making is stimulating and is, I guess, respectful and in tune with the kind of incredible observation that that has sparked it from scientific community.
There's an interesting relationship here, I think, between belief and knowledge, in that you're interested, in a sense, as a kind of spiritualness in your work, and you're interested in Sufism. Do you think there is a relationship between the notion of a God and what scientists do?
Some thinkers, some scientists are unafraid to contemplate big issues, and I am interested in those, and I'm interested in how forms of knowledge might run side by side that are possibly trying to look at similar things.
You got this 2-year fellowship, and you're off to Albuquerque to the observatory there, and you're also going off to Iran.
Yeah.
What are you looking at in Iran?
Because I'm designing a work for this 17-metre diameter dome in Albuquerque. I started thinking the dome is a really particular, specific architectural space that clearly needs to be felt and experienced, and is, historically very much part of Islamic culture. And so I thought I wanted to have to go and actually take myself off and experience the dome in architecture in Iran, in places like Isfahan.
And is also registered as a kind of sacred space as well.
Any space that amplifies sensation, of course, is going to be more conducive to
transcendence.
So I think it's very interesting that this most sacred architectural space is also used very particularly by a scientific strand of observation of astronomical phenomena.
Well, good luck with your fellowship for 2 years, and I hope you find a studio at the end of it. Thank you for joining us on Sunday afternoon, Lynette Walworth.
My pleasure.
Right now, on Sunday afternoon, Barry Humphries takes tea with Margaret Olley in Obsessions.
It's not surprising to me that Margaret Olley is probably the most popular of all living Australian painters. Her work has that wonderful intimacy and humanity, even when a human being is not present in the painting. That a painting of flowers, dead flowers, a tabletop, a few cushions, a sofa, half-open door, a hint of a garden in the distance, is a human picture. Says much for her genius.
It's amazing. Once you sort of start changing everything starts changing again. And I'd like to start painting it all over again. It's amazing. One thing changes a whole lot. One direction of the stem sends everything, the whole thing gets out of kilter. Well, it's very hard to really say when I became interested in painting. I think it probably started when I was at kindergarten. And then I was sent to boarding school at the age of 6 in Townsville. The school had a most wonderful collection of Medici prints. An assemblage in the morning, I really can't remember what the headmistress used to say because I always had my eyes on an easel. And I always remember the most wonderful Degas prints that were up. And Gauguin, one in particular of a white horse, green and orange, Tahiti. You know, I'd just drift off and I wouldn't be aware of whatever was going on. I mean, that was the main attraction for the morning to me. And when I left school, my mother would have loved me to have become a nurse. Can you imagine? I think I would have killed the patients. But she said, send her to art school. And it was wartime. But as soon as I came down to Sydney and discovered what I really wanted to do, I just took off. All I wanted to do was to be involved with painting.
500,000 cheering people watched the greatest parade that Sydney has ever seen.
When the war ended, I don't think I even went into the city to celebrate because I was too interested in doing. I mean, it was like sort of tunnel vision, very tunnel vision. I spend my life going from one place to another, following the light round. I'll never trust my eye. Uprights and perpendiculars, yeah, of course.
The creative bug seems to begin at a very early age with most artists, And with her, the obsession just grew and grew and grew. And I think it's interesting to think about her position as a woman. She was smart enough to recognise that men artists were getting most of the attention and the success. She made a decision that fairly early on, it was probably in the 1930s, in the early 40s, that to succeed as a painter, she would have to become more determined like a man.
French.
At the same time, if you walk into her house and see the way she paints, she has all the charm of a wonderful woman. It is a woman's world.
Have I shown you these wonderful orchids?
What are they?
Charles gave me.
Who gave them to you?
Charles, Lord James. Aren't they terrific?
It's only in fairly recent years that she and I have become quite close friends. So that whenever I come to Sydney, Margaret Olley is probably the person I always see first. And she takes me on a little tour of this extraordinary house of hers and shows me what she's working on. Now, are you having an exhibition soon?
Well, I was supposed to be having
Because
one
in London
January.
they're all agog.
Oh, my
And
dear.
you're there, you know, in her room in London.
Well, I should have been
Quite
there.
a few very nice
I should have
pictures
been
there.
in London this time. I should be there this time, but no. I think I'll aim for next year.
Yes?
I'll aim for next year. No.
Well, you know you sell very well there.
Well, I don't know why.
I think you, more than any other Australian painter, you're popular in England.
You think so?
Yes.
Oh, well, they're all hand done.
Well, you see, that's the difference.
I think the 1948 portrait by Dobell of Margaret was really her first entrance into the limelight.
Dobell. In the 40s, he rides the crest of fame on controversy. His portrait of fellow artist Joshua Smith is dubbed a caricature and grotesque. But he retains the Archibald Prize, and in 1948 does it again with his portrait of young Brisbane artist Margaret Olley. The critics again protest.
I just can't understand the controversy myself. I try to make a decorative picture of it. To me, the picture is the main thing, and the likeness, of course, is very essential. And I think I got the likeness, and I hope I made quite a nice picture of it.
I think it's like her too.
And the shy painter from Wanji on the shores of
I
Lake
couldn't look at it for years because I was hounded by the press. I associated that portrait with cameras, so I was always approached it shyly from round a corner.
For someone whose life was very private, this was like a nightmare. And in fact, it was this fear of being invaded and her shyness, I think, which really led to her drinking.
So slowly, I think I introduced a little of something to help you overcome shyness before you went out. Little did I ever realise that over the years it would suddenly creep up and grab me. But it's very insidious the way it comes up and sneaks up on you. And there was a time when I really had to depend upon it. I mean, I had to have a drink. And it was affecting my work. But one goes against the other. Friends tried to help. And I used to think under my breath, why don't they mind their own business? Nothing to do with them. But in the end, this person suggested I go into a clinic. But of course, before I went in, I had to have a great supply at home. But I remember going home, finding the bottles, and I used to look at these bottles and say, well, it's either you or me. It's either you or me. I mean, it was a very personal little struggle. My life, I refer to as before and after. And I think of it, of all that freedom I've got since haven't had a drink since 1959. Everything else has been a plus since then, because I may as well have been dead. That's the way I was going. So now I celebrate life. That's what it's all about. I'm looking forward to these coming up because I'm wanting to paint those. It's a great little break to come out in between painting, to move the hose and water the goldfish.
When she decided to put the cork in the bottle, as she puts it herself, and make a irrevocable decision never to drink again, because, well, she was close to the brink with her drinking, it signified a new strength in her palate, stronger colours and so forth.
When I picked myself up again, I realised that the New York school was greatly influencing everybody's paintings.
During the 1960s, abstraction became rampant in the practice of Western art, and a lot of artists in the 60s in Australia, as well as all over the world, turned to America, and in particular to New York.
They were painting over paintings and getting with whatever was going on in America. And with all the frenetic sort of paintings that were going on, give me a quiet, beautiful Mirandy. And of course, Jeffrey Smart, in the same way, he stuck to his image. And he was almost rubbished. You know, we were both sort of, we weren't with it, so we were out of it.
You had a look at the Cy Twomleys?
Well, you know Cy Twomley, don't you, Margaret? Remember seeing those in London? Margaret finds a lot of contemporary art indulgent. She's almost a bit right of Genghis Khan in her politics, and she doesn't believe in artists being given a helping hand by governments.
I'm wondering about this wall. Oh dear.
Now, what do you think of that?
An illusion. An illusion.
Do you think it's commenting
Please
on that
do
fact?
not touch. It asks to be touched, doesn't it? Hmm? Well,
It's quite disorientating to look at.
yes,
isn't
it is. You really want to go to an optometrist. Actually, it reminds me of those mirrors we used to look at in Luna Park years ago. What an indulgence takes up a whole wall. To be quite honest, this is more my scene, thank you, after that other room in there.
And the Mirandy.
I just love now these.
The Mirandy.
These are paintings. That little painting, it's so small. When you think of, you know, that big installation on one wall, give me that Mirandy any day. It says everything. And it's all together. It's so strong. I'm always waiting to be surprised by something that's going to be great. Or maybe there's a germ there that can lead to something. But I think the trouble today that everybody wants to be an artist, and they want instant art. It's got to be done immediately, and it shows. And half the time there's nobody at home, as I'm always saying. Nobody at home. I think nature makes its own pieces of sculpture. Here you are, little fourth of a birth. The last of the flowering. They look marvellous with the cornflowers. There you are.
The place is looking very bare at the moment. I think she must have got rid of a lot of things, or perhaps there's been a major robbery. I've never actually seen this house looking so austere, Spartan, empty. You've been throwing things out?
Well, I keep trying to. Do you have sugar? I forget.
No.
No.
I have lots of cakes and things, but no sugar.
Well, there you are. I think there's a knife if you cut the tart.
Have you ever painted a portrait? Yes, you have.
I won the Helena Rubinstein. It's Pam Bell, but it all went in the fire. We haven't got a photograph
I
of
don't know
it.
how you got over that.
Hmm? Not even a photograph.
A fire. I never get over it.
No, I know.
There was a devastating event in her life in 1979 when her mother's house burnt down in Brisbane.
It was full of irreplaceable things like sketchbooks. Sketchbooks and early paintings. There were paintings under carpets, there were paintings tacked up in the back of doors in the studio. All sorts of things it's just gone. My mother was in Sydney, and I made sure that no one told her. I thought, why should she know? It was a great sadness, but you have to keep going. And I think it's going on painting just held me together. But years later, a young boy rang me up and said, my father gave me a painting years ago. And he said, I'm returning it to you. And I think it was probably removed by the fireman. Strange that it came back to me.
10, 12 years ago, she decided to give something back to the community that supported her, to start giving things to museums.
I've had enjoyment from paintings that people have given to galleries all over the world. And when I decided to get out of property in Newcastle, I set up a trust fund that enabled me to give paintings to galleries. So I thought I'd rather go shopping with my money in my lifetime to give people pleasure. Gives me pleasure giving. I mean, and I don't know why I can't make it contagious. I mean, the joy of giving is just as good as receiving.
her contributions to the Art Gallery of New South Wales have been extraordinarily generous, perhaps more generous than those of any other private benefactor of an Australian museum. And it's an eclectic selection that she makes. It's not just all work like the work she does.
I mean, I love the Indian lady with the big boobs. I think my favourite has to be the Degas drawing. And the hand moves on. I had no intention of working down there, but your eye takes you down. Well, that's good. Oh, how delicious.
Yes, it is nice. How long have you lived here now, Margaret? I think this is like an archaeological site. I think if you dig, there'll be layers which can be carbon dated.
Oh, can I tell you that Barry Pearce
From the gallery?
thought, yes, for this parallel vision exhibition that he was doing, he thought, well, he rang me up one day and he said, how about if we borrow some furniture? I think that'd be a good idea in this room
that is a
we're
good
doing.
idea.
I can't tell you, even removing the things from the chairs was an archaeological dig, because it went back years.
But you should never have suggested it. It was your
I didn't
suggestion.
suggest it. I'm just going to get
But
a
I always
serviette.
think pictures
Just
look...
going to
Get a
serviette.
little fork, will you? I'll get it, but I mean...
No, I'll get it. Everything's getting closer and closer together so I can haul myself about. It's
Well, you're
nice
moving
and
very
messy.
quickly, Margaret.
What?
You're moving around pretty quickly. We'll begin to think that that walking frame is a fraud.
I've known Margaret since I was born. I've been going to her place forever, basically, and then after my grandmother died, she was lonely and I was lonely and we moved in together. I moved here after Margaret asked me to come over and help. She
Hannah
said,
had a job down in the ice cream factory and her mother told me that she couldn't bear it, the boys were teasing her and she just left the job. And I said, well, maybe Hannah would like to come and give me a hand. I said, I don't know what I want done.
I didn't know what you wanted done either.
Well, I sure didn't. I was so sick. For somebody who did everything in between painting, I didn't know what I did. I feel I've been in hell just recently when I refer to falling into my black hole of depression. And I lost all my iron and energy. And I couldn't paint. I wanted to, but I couldn't. And it was the most terrible feeling.
When she was really depressed in the black hole, I heard her say to someone on the phone, oh, I don't think I'm going to paint again. And I couldn't believe that she would even think that for a second. But slowly she came through it and she got out of it and she started painting again, and it was great. You know, she was so happy. She just got out the acrylic. I'm not touching the oils, I'm just doing the acrylic, and she got it out. And I was so relieved because I can't see how she can stop. You know, I mean, she's lost her balance. She's used this frame, but it doesn't stop her. She still goes out, 5 nights a week, and she still paints all day, every day. She doesn't stand up, she sits down, and it's amazing.
I belong to the group now, and I didn't invent it, but it was my dear friend Frankie Mitchell who used to say, hurry, last days. And he's so right. Hurry, last days. It's all right for all you young people. You've got the rest of your dear little lives. But we are definitely hurry last days. Oh, that's an interesting way of seeing it. I might change that all again.
Her belief that every day, the greatest subject of all is the life that's going on around you. I think that's the great legacy of Margaret Olley's paintings. You can wake up in the morning and there's a work of art in your living room, in your kitchen, in your back garden.
Maybe I'm forever hopeful. You know, you hope there's still great paintings to come. They were always after the painting. I think it was Robert Haynes who once said, when I sort of stopped drinking, he said, oh, you know, you're almost sort of late for your own funeral. And I think now I'll sort of, as the bon Dieu comes, I'll say, just 1 minute, I'm not ready yet, I've still got to do that painting. Not ready yet.